Advisor of Deysine University, Professor GSIB. May I kindly request Sir to raise the dice and take his chair. Thank you, sir. We have with us our learned guest, Professor Deysine, Professor from International University of Paris, Paris. May I kindly request Madam to please raise the dice and take her chair. Thank you, Professor. I will now request our respected Dean and Director of Deysine School of International Business, Deysine University, Professor B.P. Kumar, to give his welcome address.
International University of Paris, Professor Deysine, faculty colleagues, heads of the institutions, students, ladies and gentlemen. On my own behalf and on behalf of Deysine School of International Business, I extend warm welcome to all of you to this distinguished lecture to be given by Professor Deysine. I would like to say a few things about this lecture and what went behind this lecture. It all started in 2008 when I met Professor Anne in the International University of Paris, for the MOU that we have reached between these two institutions. Well, again, after the expiry of the initial MOU, I met her in 2013 to get it renewed, and again she played a key role in getting it renewed, and she was instrumental, all these years, in continuing the relationship between these two institutions. She was a great friend of the school, and she would like to support the school to come up in a big way in international business. I'm really grateful to her, and I would like to place on record my sincere thanks for all the support that she has given to me in Paris, and seeing that the MOU is reached and it is continued year after year. But again, some 4 or 5 years ago, I requested her to visit our school to offer a course to our students in the school and also to give a distinguished lecture. Well, she was supposed to come sometime in 2009, but because of her preoccupations in the United States of America, she couldn't make it happen that time. But again, in 2012, she was to come, but then she went to Africa and then fell sick, and then she couldn't make it. This year, we have made it a point that she should visit us, and we fixed the date in October, but there was a hoodoo, but even then we were ready, but there was a problem, you see, at her end, and therefore we could not happen it in the month of October. But then finally we made it, and she reached on 28th, and she has been in the school for the past 1 week, and she has been teaching a course, International Trade Concept to our students in the fifth trimester, and she has interacted with some of the faculty members, not all the faculty members, because she is having a very busy schedule. For all that, for having accepted our invitation to teach a course and to give this distinguished lecture, I'm really grateful to Mr. Anne. Thank you very much. And I don't have to introduce the school to her because she knows about the school. She has been in the school for the past 7 days. Therefore, I don't talk anything about the school. Perhaps I may request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to say a few things about the university and perhaps a few words about the school as well. But then, I would like to make a few observations on the world economy and particularly the European continental economy. To me, I think it's important to set the stage, at least for the distinguished lecture to be presented by apparent. Well, I quickly looked into the data and data in the world economy and also data in the European economy. There are a few things which are very clear. It's a fact we should agree that the entire world economy is not in a good shape. Although there is a reasonably positive picture from Britain and US. In fact, Japan economy is struggling, and there is a decline in the growth of Chinese economy right from 2009. And also, the biggest problem for the world economy is coming from the continental Europe. There are many problems with the continental Europe. We all know very well. But I would like to highlight three important problems. I would like to say a few words about that before I take it from here. One is inflation. Well, it's not exactly inflation. There's no inflation in the continental Europe. Well, if you see, the European Central Bank has a target of 2% inflation, but the European Union has an overall rate of inflation at ratio increased to 175%, and in Portugal it's virtually double to 129%. Well, this is the problem, in the entire European zone. Interestingly, the bonds yields are increasing. In fact, it has become difficult for the private sector as well as for the governments to submit to that. That's one of the biggest problems in the European Union. Well, there's another interesting problem with this immigration. In fact, Britain is debating on that, and other countries in the country, they have a lot of problems about immigration. On one hand, they need people, but on the other hand, laws are coming in the way to address the problems in immigration. Well, these are some of the problems the European Union is facing with. But the European laws perhaps can be improved to address some of these. But if this law can be changed, perhaps maybe the European Union can implement for the next solutions. It is precisely in this context that we should understand the legal environment in the entire European Union and how we can address some of the problems with the changes in the European laws. Well, I'm sure that Mr. Andrews is going to talk to us on these issues, and I'm actually looking forward to some of the perspectives that you will share with us on these various issues in the legal environment. And with this, I thank her once again, and I welcome all of you to this distinguished lecture. Thank you very much.
Assistant in the US Senate. In France, she was a legal advisor to French firms doing business in the US and worked with ANVAR, the French Innovation Agency, and MIT in Boston on strategic alliances. At Paris West Lancaster University, she was Vice President for International Relations from 1998 to 2003. She also created and directed a summer program of comparative law between 2005 and 2013. She is now, and has since 2002, President of the US-French Consortium of Academic Cooperation in Africa, where she also does volunteer political and legal work with NGOs such as NDI or the International Lawyers Association. Professor Anne has written extensively on subjects such as comparative political and legal systems, lobbying in the US and the EU, international business transactions, drafting and negotiating of international contracts, as well as cross-cultural communication and negotiation. Professor Anne Deysine is a regular guest on the radio and TV shows to discuss US and comparative and legal issues. Now it's time for felicitating our learned guest and seasoned scholar from Paris. May I now kindly request the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Deysine University, Professor GSIB, and respected Dean and Director Professor V. Kumar of Deysine School of International Business to felicitate our learning guest, Professor Anne Deysine, Professor from International University of Paris, Paris.
That the citizens could elect the members of the European Parliament. Okay, so you have all this. And so in what I'm going to show you, and I think national product and the debt of the country should not be over 60%. Now, as I was saying to a journalist who was asking, unfortunately the member states, including and first the big ones, France and Germany, at some point decided that, well, those criteria were not that important and it didn't really matter if they did not comply by those figures. And the Commission did nothing. And so we entered into a period, not very good, of member states having bigger debts and bigger deficits. This was true of Spain, Italy, France. I'll leave Greece out. Now, as I said, the EU often makes progress because there are difficulties. Well, this is exactly what happened. When the euro was created, there are some people that immediately realized that it's very nice to have a common currency, but it's a real problem if we don't have the things that go with it. And in fact, we didn't have the things that go with it, that should go with it. We should have a common tax policy. Otherwise, some member states say, come to me, and they have lower taxes. This is what Ireland does and many others. We don't have common, and I would like to give special thanks to Dr. Kumar and Dr. Radha, where is she, for taking good care of me and even allowing me to do some shopping, very little, but some shopping, and seeing some of the area. I would also like to thank everybody, but those that are not here, that, roti, water, and tea, giving me the choice between lemon tea and green tea, and bringing water, etc. And my last, but not least, thanks to the students, whom I have compelled and forced to adapt to my mix of French and American methodology, meaning they had to read ahead of time so that we could discuss in class. I think they've survived, so it is a good thing. So on those terms, again, many thanks to everybody, and let me start. The title is very ambitious, partly my mistake, because I sent it by email and then it became reality. But also because it's an important subject. You will realize two things. One, of course, as a lawyer, I'll try to show you that law is important. That should not be a surprise. And second, I also would like to sort of counterbalance what the media say or don't say about Europe. For the last 10 days, I've been reading the local press and using examples of what I could see and read about foreign direct investment, the need for more arbitration for our class discussions, and I realized that there is very, 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 very little mention of Europe. So that in fact, the only news about Europe come on TV, mostly CNN, CNBC, and you need to realize that they are very biased. Our friends, the Americans, are very nice, but it's always America first. So at first they were very interested, for instance, for Europe to create the euro, and then they decided, oh my God, this is too much competition, so they did their best to kill the euros. I mean, the news as it is presented by American media can never be perfectly neutral and impartial. So you may want to realize that when you watch CNBC, and this is also for Dr. Kumar, who has CNBC on all day long in his freezing office. All right, more seriously, so I'll try to give you a legal but also practical understanding of how the EU works and how it functions. We have problems, like any country, any regions in the world, and the crisis that was imported once again from our dear friends, the Americans, has struck Europe very seriously, starting in 2008. But as I will show you later, Europe often works best when there is a real crisis because it forces the member states to do things that they would not do in normal circumstances. So that we have made a lot of progress on some stabilization mechanism concerning the euro, for instance. So, in other words, Europe is now many more than 50 years, so it has developed. During those 50 years, it has met numerous problems. But globally, it has found good solutions to those problems. And now, with the new commission presided by Jean-Claude Juncker, he has a good possibility to once more get the European machine started. We don't know whether he can do that. There are problems again, but there is a good possibility that he can do that. And when I show you the institutions and how the EU institutions work, you will see that it's fairly complex because, in fact, because of political preferences, we have two types of mechanisms within the EU. At first, well, you know how the EU was created. It was not called the EU at the time, but the idea was to make sure there would never ever be a war in Europe. So it started with a common market of steel and coal. So it was very, very economic. And the founding fathers, Jean Monnet and Robert Schuman, among many, wanted something very similar to the US. In fact, some of them discussed United States of Europe. Okay? So they wanted a federal system, very much like the US, with a sizable amount of power at the federal level. Okay? Along the years, a number of member states were not too happy about giving away too much of their sovereignty. So there was resistance at different periods, the open seat policy, then the British, etc. I must admit that General de Gaulle played a role in transforming the institutions so that they became less federal. And during one period, in fact, between 68 and early 80s, almost all decisions had to be reached by unanimity. Well, there were not too many members at the time, but even getting unanimity with 12 member states is a big deal, and it doesn't work. And in fact, at the time, there were two criticisms of Europe. Europe Yes. So as you know, we have 28 member states, and the important thing, you see, this is very much Commission jargon. It says the countries have pooled some of their sovereignty. In fact, of course they've pooled, but they've given up their sovereignty. But the Commission does not like to insist on that word because they know that the member states are very sensitive about giving away too much of their sovereignty. That's very, very normal. Okay, so what I said, it's both a federal system and an intergovernmental system. Then we have the European Parliament. What's important is that the 700 and so members are elected by the people, so they really represent the very democratic branch here, and they're supposed to represent the people. Then we have the Council. So the Council is the opposite. It is the member states and their priorities. The French are in favor of the common agricultural policy, the British hate the common agricultural policy. And here they fight. So, we have meetings of the ministers of agriculture, of finance, foreign affairs, etc. And then the last one is the European Commission. The European Commission is an interesting institution because it has one commissioner from each member state. But once the commissioner has been appointed and approved by Parliament, he must defend the interest of the EU. So we have one right to comply as much as possible with the criteria, or the member state can decide it doesn't matter. And nothing would happen before, nothing was provided for. There was no single supervisory mechanism. Each member state was supposed to students. I can't see because I have the light in my eyes, like they want me to confess something, which I'm not going to do. But hello, and most of you, I have taken a look at your exam, and most of you have done fairly well. So, my first thanks go to Dr. Kumar. That's right, he's shown a lot of perseverance. We have a good relationship between the two schools, but there are problems. The European Central Bank was created. When it was created, its mission, and that's a big difference with the central bank in America, was just to make sure that there would be price stability. Why? Because the Germans had so much inflation during the war, they were totally paranoid about it, and they made sure this was included in the charter of the central bank. So it took the 2008 crisis for the member states to agree to change the rules, to agree to give more powers to the central bank, which can now purchase debts, lend more money to the banks, etc., to agree to put in place those stabilization mechanisms. But here it's a good example of the EU making progress because it has to. Either the member states agree that they cannot decide what they want all the time, or it's the death of Europe. So the euro is a good example in that respect, as opposed to CNN and CNN.
This is all wonderful. Thank you very much, madam, for your time, for the wonderful, it's a very complex, and then, it's a very difficult subject. I think madam articulated it in a very, very easy way that, we were all very impressed with what is happening in EU, and then, what best we can do to explore the conditions there. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you, sir, for providing this opportunity of listening to madam. Thank you. Thank you.
The distinguished person from International University, Paris, Professor, and Deysine, and my esteemed colleague, and also the director of Rhythm School of International Business, Professor V.K. Kumar, other distinguished colleagues, Professor Satyanarayana, the director of our School of Law, and also former Vice Chancellor of Andhra Pradesh, then Andhra Pradesh State Law University, Professor another GSIB, highly competent and resource persons of global level. Today we are also having one among that is our legal environment of business in European Union and how to gain access. I know very little about international law. More I speak, more I am giving my ignorance. Therefore, I am not that competent to speak about. But at the same time, as a layman, and just out of interest, now and then I look into news. Not here to look into. But if we go into the details, I am subject to correction. How to deal with 14 countries which agreed to and which has come to a common platform. The details I have no idea, as I have already admitted my ignorance, but as a common man, I feel one of the software companies, Vodafone or something like that, the tax the Indian government has levied runs into thousands of crores, I think 3 to 3.5 crores. And very recently that company
say, got again in the Supreme Court. Whether we are losing it or not is a different story. But making an appeal, you are giving a wrong indication to Made in India concept, our Chief Minister, Prime Minister's concept. What I would like to say here is, based upon that Attorney General's advice, the Indian government opted not to go for an appeal. Here, I was told one of the law schools was given to prepare the case sheet and argue on all these things. I know that case and all these things. The students were also given this assignment and they were benefited in terms of their consultancy share and notes to the lawyer. They were also benefited. What I would like to say in my conclusion, this in the legal environment, understanding legal environment is most important, and try to settle and plan your career to become as a consultant rather than say just accepting some executive position and go on doing, say, the salary may be, but independently you are, now we have, and other conditions are comparable. The other countries within that group will not keep quiet. And at micro level, perhaps there may be some differences, but at macro level, we have to find out some homogeneity, and because of that only they have the common currency and all these things. Now, back to, say, manufacturing is one part, maintaining quality is another part, but taking the product and getting acceptability is almost another important factor. But later, understanding their, say, business environment and legal framework is much more important. If you are able to understand that, I am sure you will